So I'm Louie Hamner. I get my 30-second speech, right?
Yeah, please do.
I work for Fidelity National Title. I work with Andrea. And what I'm looking for is people in the real estate industry that are wanting to be liberated from the things that hold them back to find the success they've been looking for but have yet to achieve. That's who I like to work with. And I say that because that is what, right now, what holds you back. And I'm saying you. I'm only saying you because it's me too, right? Let me just say this. And I'm asking questions. I've never said it like this, but I want you to imagine that if somebody grew up poor to where their first house they lived in had an outhouse, and they lived in a 2-bedroom house with 15 people in a house, 3-bedroom at very most if you count a room a bedroom, but it wouldn't work in today's world. So 3-bedroom, 1 bathroom, 1 outhouse house, was on poverty his whole life, and then at the age of 49 was able to retire and live a comfortable life. And I say comfortable, just to give you an idea, that let's say spent $200,000 a year for the rest of his life and was able to spend $200,000 a year, no debt, rest of his life at the age of 49. What would you think about that person? What would you believe about him? Does anybody want a story like that? Like, who wants a story like that? Yeah. And I only say that because that's my story. I grew up, the 13 kids in my family, 3-bedroom house, used an outhouse growing up, was on welfare my whole life, began working in the 6th grade to start earning my own money to go to school. Like literally, I would come in with the money. I would give my dad the money. He would then write a check for my school books in the 6th grade. And again, I'm not saying that to impress you, but it's important that you know where I came from and you know where I am, so that you know that the time I'm going to spend with you could possibly be meaningful. Does that make sense? And I love saying this. I've been thinking about this for years, and you know, in the New Testament, Jesus said, "Be mindful of wolves in sheep's clothing," right? And what was he trying to do? He was trying to protect his flock, his people, the people that followed him. And what was he trying to protect them from? People who portrayed to be one thing, but deep down they weren't, right? And if you're a Christian and you understand the Bible just a little bit, you know, like you understand it about as much as I do, so just a little bit. Like, you know that there were Pharisees and Sadducees that were very strict rule followers, and they didn't give a shit what you did. If you broke the rule, they're gonna stone you or whatever, right? They weren't about the people, they were about the law. Am I right? You guys all, you kind of know this. Anyway, why I'm saying that is because he said, be mindful, because there's wolves in sheep's clothing. And then a lot of times, I just learned this recently. When I say recently, like in the past, 10 years. But so I'm 52, so up until 42 years old, I didn't really understand this. But then he said this in the next verse. And I'm not a scriptorian, but so I don't want you to believe. I'll give all these disclosures because I never want you to believe I'm something that I'm not. I don't want you to think I'm a freaking sheep if I'm a wolf. I never would want you to think that. And I never would want you to think that I'm a sheep or a wolf if I'm vice versa or whatever. I don't want you to have any misunderstanding of who I am and what I really believe. And sometimes that gets me in trouble at church and at home, mostly at home, but mostly at church. I can't decide. But anyway, just because that my dad really taught me that. He's like, just speak the truth, and the truth is what sets you free. And if the truth hurts, it's because you don't want to be set free from it, because that's the purpose of the truth, is to liberate you. And anyway, so then in the next verse, he says this. Do men gather grapes of thorns, or figs of thistles? Do men gather grapes of thorns or figs of thistles? And what he was saying was, have you ever gathered a grape and got pricked by a thorn that's on a grapevine? And you're going to say, nope. He's like, that's right, because there is no such thing. But there is a fruit that looks like a grape, and if you get pricked by a thorn, you do not have a grape. And if you're a man and you go home and you tell your wife you got grapes, you don't have grapes, and you're going to get your ass kicked. Like you got the wrong thing. Like I have done this 100 times where my wife says, go get this, paprika or whatever. I'm like, I don't know what it is, but it's spelled similar to what this is. Did I get it right? And she's like, no, go back. But anyway, so if you come home and you have this, you don't have that. So he's like, so you have to be mindful because there's the fruit that looks like a fig in this area. It's so deceiving. You would think it is one. So look, if there is thistles, you do not have a fig. Make sure. Does that make sense? So why am I spending time on this? Is because there are people in this industry and in other industries that to me are charlatans. They will tell you one thing and they have not achieved the thing they're telling you. Or they're charlatans and they will say to you, they will portray to you that they're an amazing family man, but they're not. Okay, but you think they did. Then what they'll do is they'll teach you how they ran their business. Then you think, man, if I run their business like he ran a business, I'm going to be a great family man too because he did it both. But he's lying to you. How he ran his business destroyed his family. And so what he's teaching you is how to destroy your family. You'll have money, but is that what you want? You see what I'm saying? So for whatever reason, I think because my dad was very strict, because I grew up, born in 1972, my dad and mom are the age of my wife's grandparents. So when I was born, all of my friends when I was a kid thought my mom was my grandma. They're like, your grandma's here. I'm like, that's not my grandma. I'm crying. Don't say that, because you had gray hair. They're like, you're your grandma. And so, in fact, my oldest sister graduated with my best friend in high school. I had a best friend in high school. His mom was my sister's best friend. That's how the disparities. That makes sense. So I always tell my wife, I was raised by your grandpa, by that generation, the greatest generation in the world. That's why I'm so great. And she's like, that's so bullshit. But anyway, but I try to pass that on, but she doesn't believe it. But anyway, why I'm telling you this is because it's important to me that you know the truth. And it's important that the decisions you make and how you run your business and how you do it and how you act in your life and what you do, it's important that you know what is actually going to get you to where you want to be. And so how do you know if someone has actually done the very thing that you're trying to do? So I want to, first off, and I've never said this, I don't think I've said this maybe once before, and it just came out. So I want to tell you this. This is how you know the guy's the real effing deal when he's talking to you and telling you how to do it, because he's going to say, you're going to do this and you're going to do that, but you got to watch out for this because this is going to totally kick your ass and you're probably going to lose, your wife's going to get mad or your spouse is going to get mad and your kids are going to think you don't love them, so don't do it like this. Do this, but watch out for this. And when you do this, you're going to think you're losing, but you're not going to be losing. It's going to feel like it. You might lose, but then you're going to win, but this is what it's like. But shit, it's hard. And they explain it in a way that's very compassionate. And they're not saying, hey, make sure you pay me for that, all right? Like, pay me because I'm helping you. They don't really care about the money. And why they don't care about the money, and I'm emotional saying this, like, because why they don't care about the money is because they see you as them. And why they love it so much is that, as I'm telling you, I see me and you, and I'm like, I wish I could go back and live the good old days. Because I didn't think it was the good old days in the good old days, but it actually was the good old days. And I wish I could go back and live. And I wish someone would tell me the things I'm telling you, because I would have done it just a little bit better, would have got there a little bit faster, and would have been just a little bit nicer. So you got to watch out for that shit. And what they're really concerned about when they meet with you is how your family life is, because I don't care how good you are, how skilled you are. What they're worried about, what you're worried about is your family. And I recently, when I sold my company to Fidelity title, they made me the president of the company. And I just want to, I'll say this, but they made me the president of the company of Utah, Fidelity National Title of Utah. And it was a hard transition. It was hard. It was just super hard. And it was making me struggle in my relationship. It was making me struggle in my marriage. And I have a son that was going to be going on an LDS mission in, I don't know when, but in a few months. And I just thought, dude, I could probably have this position and do this job and still do and work on my marriage and be with my son. I could probably do those things. But if I continued to hold on to this job and and my marriage got worse and we got divorced, I would effing hate my job because it caused me to get divorced. And if my son was like, Dad, we really didn't spend all that time and that we thought we would have because you got called away and then he's gone for 2 years, I would quit my job in a second and I would hate them and I would, sorry, Andrea, but I might hate everybody there. Just like I would be so mad and angry about it that I didn't do it. Does that make sense? So I told him, I said, I'm going to step down. And I'm stepping down, not because I can't do the job, because I can't love my family the way I want to love them. And I'm just not, it's just not worth it to me. What benefit, what does it profit me to have all this money and to have all this thing and then to lose my family? What does it profit me? I'm only doing it for them anyway, so it doesn't matter. And they're like, so you're going to do all this? I said, yeah, I don't really care. And what was awesome was when I told all my people that I was doing that and the reason, they all cried and they just said, oh my gosh, we champion you, go do it. We want you to be happy because you helped us to become happy. Does that make sense? So, and just to give you context, right? I started in this business in 2003. And in less than 2 years, I had my own office as a title officer, as an escrow officer. I was the marketer, the escrow officer, the marketer, the escrow officer, the manager. I was everything. I had 2 ladies that worked with me. There were 2 girls that were, I looked at them like my sisters because they graduated with my like younger. They were younger than me. They were like 10 years younger than me. So I looked at them as like my little sisters, and they were with me. And so I was doing everything, and I crushed it. And during the hardest economic period in real estate history, during 07, 08, 09, I did more business in 07 than I did in 06. I did double the business in 07 than I did in 06 or in 05. Or 06, I did like 50% more business in 06 than 05. I did 100% more business in 07 than 06. I did 150% more business in 08 than 07. And First American and all these underwriters were calling me like, how are you doing this? Are you cheating? Are you lying? What are you doing? Because there's no way you can get this much business when the market's crashing. And in 2010, and I went from making $33,000 a year in 2003, no lie. And in 2000, I went $33,000 in 2003. And in 2009, I made $350,000. I'm like, I'm 10 times in 6 years. I'm making 10 times what I was making. My house was paid off. I'm like, I was on welfare in 2003 when I got fired from Fidelity Investments. I had nothing. I was on welfare for months. My wife was asking us, when are we going to get money back? When are we going to get out of this? Because I got fired from Fidelity and I lost a great job. And in 2003 and then in 2009, 6 years later, at the time, in 2009, my $295,500 house was paid off. I had zero debt in 2009. And I made $350,000. Zero debt. And my wife is like, what happened? And she literally would say, are you sure you're doing it right? Like, are you, because we're in a mortgage crisis and some people did crooked, are you doing? I'm like, no, but this is crazy. I was just that good at what I did. Does that make sense? Which led me to, I continued to grow, and which led me to that. And on December 17th, 2021, I sold my business for I don't know what the digit is, but more like, I sold my business so that at the age of 49, I could spend $200,000 a year with it invested, and I still give $5 million to my kids when I died, at least 5. That was my goal, $5 million to my kids when I died, and live that way. So when I sold in December of 2021, mind you, at the very peak of the market. If I sold 8 weeks later, our valuation would have been 5 to 8 million less. 8 weeks later. So I always tell my kids, follow me for stock tips and how to run a business and when to sell it. Because I bought Tesla, and year to date, I put in 7,500 or 7,200 in Tesla stock, and today it's worth 250,000. So I always tell kids, like, follow me for stock tips, when to sell your business, but know when to buy a house, because I bought a house in August of 07 I literally bought that house, and the next week it was like $50,000 less, and the next week it was 20,000. I'm like, what is happening? I bought it to flip it. So whose husband said, I'm not going to do this anymore, don't, be careful. Yeah, Viv was like, why'd you do this? This is the stupidest thing, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it was terrible. So my point of telling you all of this is to set the tone, and I hope you feel this. Like, I just want to tell you the truth. Like, because and I know that Andrew's here and she'll probably get mad at this, but like, I don't really give a shit if you send us business. I do, but I don't. Because the first rule is, I want to make sure I can provide value first. And then if I can provide value to where you feel like that is changing your life, that is affecting your life in a way that you're actually getting what you want and you weren't able to get what you want before, like you're getting what you want because of what I told you, then I want to say, yeah, I think we should do business. Does that make sense? And not, and I have agents that if I told you their names, they're top producing agents in this state. And I get texts from them all the time saying, I would not be where I'm at without you. You are literally a massive game changer for me in my life. And again, I'm not saying any of that to brag or something, because I would never thought that I was capable of doing this. And when I sold in December 2021, and I told my wife how much is in our bank account, and I said, I just want you to understand this now. No matter where you go in the world, if you walk into any room and there's 100 people in the room, you are richer than 99% of them, than 99 of 100 of them. There's a 1% chance that somebody's richer than you in this room. Not that that means anything, but I was just trying to give it perspective, and she was blown away because she's like, I never understood that you were doing this. I thought you were just stupid. I thought you were just like working a lot and you loved it and you did this. She's like, I have no concept of numbers. It doesn't, what you're telling me now is like we won the lottery. I didn't understand. She goes, I know you would say these things, but I didn't. She's like, I believe you, but sometimes you exaggerate it. So I just didn't know. And she's like, but I just didn't understand it. Does that make sense? And again, I'm just telling you this to give you, understanding. And I just told my wife, I said, look, if I do work the rest of my life and I don't spend $200,000 a year, and our money is invested at a 13% interest rate, which is totally doable, right? In the market, whether it's real estate or the, into the S&P 500, right? The S&P 500 over a 50-year period is returned 11.5%. So you can really get, you can get 13%. That is not a far cry. I'm like, and the money grows at 13% interest rate, by the time I die, we will give $584 million to our kids. That's what they would have if I work and we don't have to spend it. She's like, shit, don't give them that much money. Let's spend it. I'm like, I agree. We should not be we should be spending this money. They don't need $584 million. But I do threaten my kids, like, whoever is willing to wipe my ass when I'm old and I can't do it, they get 40%. And my sons are like, it ain't worth it. I'm happy. I'm happy. So I'm going to ask you some questions. I want you to really write them down, and I would rather you write it down with a pen and paper, but if you don't have that, you don't have to. But I want you to write the answer down, okay? And I don't want you to think about it. So here's the thing. If you have to think about it, it's not the right answer. Because let me say this. Your ego, you are constantly at war with your ego. Because even when I'm talking and saying these things, you're like, oh, bullshit, he doesn't do that, or he thinks he's that, or your mind always does this, because my mind does it, and I think I'm a pretty nice person, but I can be pretty mean mentally when someone threatens my ego. I'm like, bullshit, there's no way they did that. They're an idiot. So your ego, so just like that book, right? Ryan Holiday says this, the book, The Ego is Your Enemy. Your ego is why you do not have the success you're looking for in your business, 100%, not even a question, that's your answer. Your ego is your enemy. It's not the tools, it's not the resources, it's not who you're around. Your ego is your enemy. because your ego keeps you from people who can actually help you, but you won't do it because you're afraid to hurt their feelings. Does that make sense? Let me just say, I say that because I was with this is years ago, but I was trying to get this agent's business. I was talking to him. I said, hey, do this, try that. They come back and they're like, dude, that worked. It worked with my team. Thank you. Like literally, this is years ago, 8 years ago. And they're like, it's working. It's great. Like, boom. And I said, has your title company ever done that for you? And they're like, no. I'm like, and I did. They're like, dude, yeah, but I can't do it. I can't send you business because I don't want to hurt their feelings. Da, da, da. And I'm like, do you think I could help you more? They're like, 100% you could. I'm like, so you're going to earn less money for your kids? Dude, I just can't tell them that. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to spend time with you. Like, why would I spend time with you? You're not my client. You're not helping. Does that make sense? You guys get this? Like, proximity is power. And so your ego will keep you from what is really the source of what you want. I have a really good friend that asked me to do something, and I said, okay, dude, I'll help you do that. But man, you got to like help me in what I'm doing. I'll help you. He's like, okay, yeah, okay. Well, he doesn't help me in the way he says he's going to help me. Like, I meet with him, I take him to lunch, I give him advice, I do these things. I'm just helping him, just like any way you would on your deals. Say this to this person, try this, try that. Just like what any escrow officer would do. It's just that my understanding and how I approach things is just a little bit different, right? It worked for him, and he wouldn't send me, he wouldn't reciprocate and send business. And again, this is another guy who said, dude, I can actually help you. And it would shock me that they would do that when the help they're getting or how the tools and resources that the other title company had wasn't even close to what I could give them. And I was just like, dude, I know there's loyalty and friendship, but you're more loyal to your friend than your family. And that is no go for me. Like, first family. First, my kids eat, then my wife eat, then I eat. And that's how it works. And if you don't operate in that, like, then your priorities, then, like, dude, you're screwed up. In my mind, right? I don't know if you agree with me or not, but that's how I saw it. Because what I did was, as I grew my business, if you're asking me why my business grew the way it did and why I was able to do it, is because I made my employees first. And I get emotional talking about it, but like, when I came to work, like, they were more important than the client. I fired clients because of how they treated my employees. I'm like, no way, go to hell. I see this woman every day. I don't care if you send me 10 deals a month. Go to hell, get out. I don't want to work with you. That's enough. It's not worth it to me. And I knew that if I was loyal to the people that actually were loyal to me and did what Zig Ziglar said, which is help enough people get what they want and you will get what you want. And I believe that with all my heart. If I did that, then I would be successful in a way that no matter what happened, how big or little that success was, I would be happy and satisfied and fulfilled because I wasn't a Judas to the people that were around me, so to speak. Does that make sense? So, you have to have a priority of really who you're loyal to. That is number one. And you're loyal to your life purpose, not your ego. And your ego will keep you from your life purpose. Why? Because your effing ego wants to be number one, not your purpose. Because your purpose is driven by your spirit. Your ego is driven by your mind. And it's like, no, you got to keep me first. I'm number one. I'm on top. I'm here. I'm on top. I'm number one. No. You're going to look stupid if you do that. You're going to sound stupid if you say that. I was just talking to Andrea today. I'm like, I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to look stupid. I'm going to sound stupid, but I've learned I just don't give a shit. Because it's more important that I'm speaking from my soul and not from my ego, right? Like, that's the conversation today. I'm like, and if I saw myself saying what I'm saying to Andrea 10 years ago, I'm like, dude, I'm on drugs and I lost my mind. I'm crazy. Like, what's happened? But I have learned certain things that are unequivocal. And the thing that where you will really benefit from today is this. My dad was very critical growing up. My dad was a military drill sergeant in the Air Force. Not only that, but he was born in 1931. And at the age of 6, he literally, my grandpa had a plow that was pulled by a Clydesdale. You know how big that horse is, right? At the age of 6, my grandpa built a box that sat on top of a plow, put a 200-pound rock in the box, because that's about the weight of a man when he stands on it, and then sat my dad on it at the age of 6 with the reins, with a Clydesdale, My dad went, yeah. And he ran that Clydesdale to plow the field, one end of the field, as his dad plowed the other end, and then they would meet, right? 6 years old. This is how my dad grew up. And these farmers that when I grew up, they would say, your grandpa was pretty much abusive to your dad. He's like, I would hire your dad out because I would think I would give him a break. He would work his ass off for me, but he could work like 3 men, and your grandpa worked him to get like the work out of 5 men. But so my point is, my dad worked hard and just told the truth. And so a lot of how he approached life at the time as a kid, I hated it because he would smack us, yell at us, make sure my shirt's all straight and my shirt's ironed and all the stuff, and go back, and I'm never going to let you come back unless you're not going to go there with the shirt, wrinkled shirt, and all this stuff and go. And my dad was just super strict, but I knew that when he told me things, although I hated the way he said it or how he treated us, because it was very hands-on, not handsy. There's a difference of handsy and hands-on. He hands-on with us, like no question you'd get smacked or hit with something or a caress wrench thrown at you or whatever to get something done. And I always tell my kids that work isn't scary because I held a utility light for my dad. He's worked on the car, and he would swear and say all these things, and I didn't move. And I'm like, so you can't scare me. Like, that guy was crazy, and I was like steady as a surgeon, But you have to be able to prioritize these things and to remember that your mind is going to try to be right and going to trick you in believing that your mind knows. And your mind is nothing more than like a computer. The quality of the information that goes in the mind determines the output of it. And so your mind is not there to make the decision. Your heart's there to make the decision. Your soul is there to make the decision. Your mind is to learn your alphabet so you can read. That's what it's for. Your soul, or your heart, the soulful part of you, is there to help you make decisions so that it leads you to an outcome. Because when I told my kids that we sold the company for what it was worth and all this stuff, they said, Dad, how did you do it? I said, honestly, I have no idea how it happened. I did not plan it. I said, I just loved the people in front of me, and I would write these things down that I'd want people to experience. Not what we would do, but what I would want them to experience. Like, I would write down, I want my employees to say that the things that we learned in our business meetings, they took to their kids, and it helped their kids be a better student. That's what I want them to say. So whatever I'm teaching my escrow assistants and my escrow officers, I want their kids to come to me and go, hey, are you Louie? Yeah. Dude, you helped my mom so much because she used to be a bitch. And she would yell, and now she talks to us in a way that's awesome. Like, literally, like in my head, that's how I thought, that's what I wanted them to say, And that stuff happened. Like, no lie, that stuff happened. They're like, my mom used to get so mad and blame me for stuff, and she doesn't do that anymore. And she said that she learned that in a meeting. Like, that's true, like, I'm not making it up. So I knew that if that's what I did, and I changed people's life at the core, and so that they saw work like a health center, not work, but they like, you know what, the more I go to work, the better I become as a person. I just want you to think about that concept, because this was my concept in 03. You're like, it might sound more relative today. You're like, oh yeah, it's kind of like that, but kind of makes sense. Well, that came from me in 03. I'm not saying I'm the source of it, but I'm telling you that's where my heart was. Does that make sense? So you have to be driving. You have to be looking at what really creates your business is experiences. Is interpersonal experiences is what promotes and creates your business. It's not what you do. It's just when they say people they don't remember what you say, but they remember how they felt, right? I remember how I felt. I don't even know what you said, but I remember that day what I felt and what I walked away doing and thinking and believing, but I don't even know what you said that day. That is what you want to be creating. So let's pause here. Go ahead.
Yes. So I'm curious. Clearly, you grew up with a lot of kids.
Not my kids.
Right.
Just kidding. I got it.
One of many. I guess knowing your background, knowing where you're at now, what did you do? You didn't wake up one morning and just decide to be a different Louie, right?
Yeah.
What were the resources? Who are the people, mentors? What are the things that you took action on to do to make
perfect.
that change in your life?
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm getting to that.
Okay.
I'm just joking. But that's what I want to say. So I'm glad you saw. But I remember the day that I believed that I had something greater to do than what I was doing. Meaning, I believed that I could be something greater than what I think I am. Like, I believed, I went to a Tony Robbins event, and I remember sitting there for the first time and thinking, I think I can be like him. I can be a Tony Robbins, not Tony, but like a variation of what he does. I believe, because here's what happened. I was making all these phone calls to real estate agents trying to get their business, and they're jerks. But just kidding. But anyway, I was just making, and I was talking to them. They're like, I don't want to work with you. And I'm just like, dude, what is happening? Like, why can't I do this? Because I hated doing it over the phone anyway. Much better in person. And I remember thinking, this is when the Jazz were really good. Stockton Malone. This is the year. This is the year before they went and made, when they went to the end with the Bulls that year they got gypped off, right? Anyway, so I remember thinking, man, if I was Karl Malone, like literally, if I was a Karl Malone and I owned a title company, people would come here just because I'm Karl Malone. I might even be marginal as a title company, but because I'm Karl Malone and they want to hear stories and all this stuff, they would send me business 100%. And I thought, so then I literally stopped making all these phone calls because I had like a list of 25 people. I'm like, hate getting yelled at and all this. So I stopped. I just put down, okay. So I flipped this. So I always keep one of these because my college professor said he was an advisor for Arthur Anderson, and he met with all these, these great CEOs of, and I can't think of their names. Who's the guy that ran GM, then Chrysler? Yeah, Iacocca. Like, he met with Iacocca, all these stuff. He's like, these guys had a legal pad of paper like this. This is what he said. I've seen it. He's like, from New York. I've seen it way too many times. They have a legal pad like this. They write down a wish list of what they wish the company could be, and they keep that in their top drawer, on their top right drawer. He's like, or they keep that in their desk drawer. They pull it out and they schedule free time to just look at that and go, yeah, I wish that could be. How could I do that? And they just think about that. He's like, so I'm learning this, right? In 2090, or not 2000, that's how bad it was, 1997. He's telling me this. He's like, so get a yellow pad of paper. That's what they do. He's like, it's not special. Everybody has access to this. So I'd keep this. So I flipped the yellow pad of paper over like this, and I wrote down, who are the people, who are the people that if I were like them or them and I owned a title company, I would get business? Who are the people that, and I just wrote down, Karl Malone, John Stockton, Michael Jordan. I thought, wait, who are the people like, and I wrote down, Tony Robbins, I've heard of him. Tony Robbins, I've heard them talk about Mike Ferry. So I just kind of listed out like, I don't know, eight or 10 people that I thought one of these people. And then I just thought, okay, so I'm gonna go look these people up. And then I'm gonna find which one that I like the most, and then I'm gonna try to model them and everything they do. I'm just gonna try to model them. I'm not mimicking, I'm modeling. I'm watching what they do, then I'll have my own variation of what that looks like, but nobody's ever gonna say, you say that, use the same words that Tony Robbins uses or whatever. I'm not gonna parrot him, I'm gonna model what he does. So I went through this thing and I thought, and then I had a friend say, hey, you wanna go to Tony Robbins? I'm like, dude, he's on my list, maybe I'll go to that, I'll go to the event. So I go to the event, I see this, and then I think, man, if I knew what he knew, and then if I modeled my college professor, Mike Simkowski, who knew all the stuff about business and could coach and could how you should structure a business or how you could teach your employees stuff, if I could do all of that, that would be helpful for the people that I service. Do you agree with that? So I thought, I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna model that. So I just started modeling and learning what they learned and what they knew, and then started implementing it in my life, and that started changing my life. And then I realized that time is of the essence, and I thought, dude, I'm getting older every year. Like, I gotta have more money. I should have more money now, because I worked at Fidelity Investments, and I knew what investments was, and time value of money, and all of that stuff. I'm like, I should have more money now. I gotta work harder. So I thought, okay, so here's what I'm gonna do. I have to, and I made a list, I have to read 30 minutes every day in a book that's going to develop my skill set and my mindset. Just 30 minutes. I got to do that. I would read from the Bible or scriptures every day for 30 minutes. I would write my journal for 15 or 20 minutes. Then I would pray, and then I would kind of look at my day and kind of write down things what I wanted to accomplish, and I needed to do that. And then I wanted to be able to run. I wanted to exercise. So my friend ran, and I started doing that. And I thought, okay, I'm gonna get up at 6 o'clock and start doing that. And I realized 6 o'clock is not early enough, so I got up at 5:30. And before I was getting up at like 6:30. I was getting up like at 7 o'clock, then getting ready, leaving work by 8, then being at work by 8:15, yada, 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 all this stuff. But then I started dialing it back because I'm like, I can't get all this done and go to work. Because then I was thinking this, if I could come into work like on fire, knowing exactly what I'm gonna do, had practice everything, and walk into work at 8 a.m., and I'm walking to work on fire, guaranteed my competition is not doing that stuff. And they answer the phone, hello, I haven't had my cup of coffee yet. And I'm like, hey, what's up? How's it going? And I'm talking this fast. And they're like, what the hell? And if they see that, they know I'm going to beat them every time. Does that make sense? And I realized I kept dialing back the time because I'm like, I couldn't get it all done. And then I started adding things. Then I started thinking, I got to run 5 miles. I want to run 5 miles because I want to run a marathon. So I started running 5 miles every day. And then I started getting up at 4:30. And I had to be out the door meeting Roger to go run. And I was always a couple minutes late. And then I'm like, I have to get up at 4:27. I'll never forget this during the market crisis, during 08. Yeah, 08. In September 11th of 08, I realized, like, dude, I got to get up at 4:27. So that I'm dressed, so that I wanted to be my feet on the ground, and I'm getting my running clothes to put on. I don't have to have them on, but I can't go off at 4:30. Then I'm like, okay, wait a minute. Then I'm getting up, and now it's 4:35, and then I'm hustling. Does that make sense? Because when you have to do something rushed, I'll never forget this, I learned this, when you're doing anything that's kind of rushed, you don't feel wealthy. Do you? If you're in a hurry getting shit done, you don't feel wealthy. You don't feel in control of your life. And I'm like, I got to be able to get up and be like, I'm going to walk over there. There's my shoes. But if I'm like, I got to get my shoes, I got to do this, I feel like someone's gunning after me, and I'm hustling to get my ass out the door. Does that make sense? Because it creates a mindset. Because when your physiology is opposite of somebody that's confident and in control of their life, you can't hold the physiology or the mindset that you need, because your physiology will always override the mindset. Right? That's why they put prisoners in a prison where they can't stand up. Because as long as they can't stand up, they can't access their highest power. Because they're like this, just enough to where they can't stand tall. Even if it was this, just enough where they can't do this. If they're just this, if we do that, we break them every time. Because your physiology determines your mindset. Does that make sense? You get it? So I remember the day, I'm like, I have to get up at 4:27, and I told my wife, I can't watch TV anymore. She's like, why? I'm like, because I have to be in bed, not asleep, but in bed by 9:30. Like, teeth brushed, jammies on, all that stuff. 9:30, I'm in, and I could fall asleep at 9:32. I have to be in bed. And so I would tell my kids, you have to be in bed. You have to be in your bed by 8 o'clock or no story time. And story time was an awesome motivator, because they're like, what about 8:01? Nothing. That's not fair. 8 o'clock or nothing. And they were like, they never missed it. And Viv says, good thing you're a good storyteller, because we got our kids in bed at time. Because they would never miss it. I'd say, hey guys, what time is it? They're like, oh my gosh, we got to go now. Brush your teeth, jammies on, clothes laid out, blah, blah, blah. I had them do what I did. Clothes laid out, know what they're going to wear tomorrow, everything done. All this stuff was done. They were doing what I was doing. They were doing it at night. I get emotional saying this. I like the patterns that we created for them. All straight A students, and I'm not smart. Viv's not smart. All straight A students, all amazing kids, scholarships. They love me because of that example. And I've been married 29 years. And my life is amazing. And that's what I love about real estate, is that nothing else would have driven me to do this stuff unless I didn't feel like there was a tiger chasing me every day. And although it was scary as hell, I kind of liked it, because I know I'm not motivated enough to do this stuff. But I was motivated enough to do it for my family first. Does that make sense? So that changed me. When I read The Compound Effect, I understood the everyday. I understood the time value of money, but I didn't realize the time value of my life and the time value of my skills and abilities. I'm like, oh my gosh, if my skills and abilities are very high now, the time value of that is ridiculous. I can't wait until I'm 40 to be good at speaking in public. I have to start now because I'm terrible. Like, I have to do it now. I can't wait because there is a time value of everything. Do you see that? So that's why I realized I have to get it before 27 because I have to have done all of this, and all of those things started paying off. And my wife would say, "You're a machine. You do all these things." Literally, we went to marriage counseling during that mortgage crisis, and I remember he was sitting there, and the therapist said, "Viv, you want to go first and tell what your client?" She goes, "Yes." Every morning he wakes up at 4:27, never misses. I don't care if we're on vacation, 4:27, and it just pisses me off. And then he does this, and she's saying all these things. And again, I'm no saint. I'm a Latter-day Saint, but I'm no saint. But like, anyway, and the therapist goes, "Okay, so you're mad at him because you went on a week vacation and he got up every day at 4:27 and ran every day and did this and did this and did that." Yeah, and this is why you're upset. She goes, "Yes." And he goes, "Okay, normally, anything else you want to add to that story?" She's like, "No, not really." And he's like, "Okay, normally we're talking drugs, sex, alcohol, and we're talking reading, writing, scripture, like." And he goes, "But it is irritating. Like, and I get it. Like, I took that a little overboard, but it was awesome to go through that process." And him like, "Okay, you don't have to do it every day. Like, you can do this." I'm like, and he gave me permission not to do it every day. But that was a turning point of realizing that there's a time value, and this was the lesson that nobody's taught me, but there's a time value of your skill. And I understood if you put $1,000 in today when a kid is born, by the time they're 65, that $1,000 is $1.5 million. I get that. I didn't realize that if I learned how to have difficult conversations now, it's going to make me $2 million over the next 20 years. I did not realize that. That's what's going to make me the money. A program is not going to make you money. What's going to make you money is how you make people feel. That's what makes you the money you want. It's not the skill. It's how you make people feel and how you can influence them to choose a better life, and it feels good for them. That's what Tony Robbins does. And I told my son when he was a senior in high school, he's like, "Dad, how much money do you make every year?" I said, "What do you want to know for?" And he's like, "Because I need to know the job I'm going to choose for a career so that I can make the money that you make. It's because I want this lifestyle." I said, "It's not what I do. No escrow officer makes the money I make." I said, "But it's what I'm able to do. I want to take you to Tony Robbins, yada, yada." He goes, "I don't want to go." But then later on, he's like, "Okay, Dad, what do I got to do to make that money?" I said, "You're never going to make it with that. You can learn all the skills you want. That is not what's going to, all the information you want and certifications, but you're never going to make it unless you can influence people in a way that makes them feel inspired to act, to live more congruent with their life purpose, and they get to experience God for whatever that is for them. And when they get to experience God for whatever that is for them, and they get to live their life purpose, and you are the causation, you are the catalyst and the inspiration of why they did it, that will make you all the money you ever want to make in your life. I don't care what the job is. And he's like, "Okay, I'll go to Tony Robbins with you, but I just don't want to like make my move every time." He's like, I said, "Okay." So that was killer. And then what led me to this was Tony Robbins is about doing. Do. Massive action, all the stuff, which is great. That is not wrong. That is not wrong. Because you have to take that action and you have to risk things and do that, and you have to do that. But if you do it and it overrides, I'll say this, if you're always just taking the action and trying to get it, but you're not into your soul, you're not into your heart, you're not into the soulful part of you, you will end up achieving things in a way that is not fulfilling to you. You will have achieved exactly what you wanted to, but it will not be fulfilling. And what will happen is you'll achieve it in a way, because this is what I learned. I've really never heard anybody say this, but this is what I wrote in my journal is that the purpose of your dreams are to cause you to act in a way, like how we kind of dreamed that we say, I want to be this because I want to be able to have this and provide this for my family. Like this is right, Maslow's hierarchy needs. A certain level, our dreams are incongruent to the minimum level of standard we're going to live, right? Nobody says, I hope the dream that I have a 1-bedroom house. Like that is not because you want to have a happy spouse, like, you know. So but your dream, so your life purpose drives you, your life purpose, so, or dream, but I'm just saying life purpose. Your life purpose will drive you in a way, if you follow it with all your heart, and that's what you're doing. You're not following the money, you're following the purpose. If you follow that life purpose, it will 100% make you the money that you are comfortable and want to live at. It may not be the 20 million that you thought so-and-so did or the 100 million, but it will provide you with your level of comfort that you have dreamed of. You're like, this is good enough for me. And it's damn good. It could be better, but it's good enough. Does that make sense? But that is unfulfilling because you will do it, if you do it by just doing and you're not doing it soulfully, because the real purpose of the dream, the life purpose, is so that when you look back on it and what you've done and you're like, dude, all of this money means shit to me. But how I feel about who I am, because I now know that I'm enough and I'm enough in a way that I love the most, it's really about who I became to fulfill that life purpose. I don't really care about the money. Does that make sense? And I remember I had a moment after I sold my company, and I'm sitting in my house, and again, I'm only telling you this, but like my house is $3 million, I paid cash for it. I'm sitting in this house, I have all this, and I just had this argument like with my oldest son, or this interaction with my oldest son a couple days earlier, and I was sitting there crying in my bedroom thinking, I have everything I've ever wanted, and I'm sad as hell right now. And I realized like, oh my gosh, I haven't worked on my relationship with my oldest son. And I don't really give a shit about all this stuff, but I care about him. It doesn't matter. I thought all of this was gonna change me to help me to have this, but my son was going through a hard time and I couldn't relate to him the way I wanted to. And I'm like, I made him feel crappy. And I just thought, oh my gosh, I did all this amazing thing that everybody thinks I'm amazing at, and I just made him feel like a piece of shit. I'm like, I hate myself for this. All of this doesn't matter. Take it all away. I just want my relationship with my son. And I remember praying that day, like, God, like, you have to help me to understand how to do this with him because he's so hard. Because he's not like, you know, he's just harder, right? Just different. His mindset's way different. Because Viv taught him. Just kidding. But I was like, it's supposed to be a joke, but it's okay. You probably thought I did. Anyway, but so then that I realized like that really solidified that belief that I had that when you live your life purpose, it makes you become who you actually want to become. And people are like, dude, you got a nice house. I'm like, I don't care. Oh, you got this. I don't really care. Dude, go ask my kids who their father is. That's what I want you to do. Like, I don't care about this house. Just go ask them. Like, seriously, here's my daughter. Call her up. Like, I just want you to hear what she says about me, or my son-in-law, what he thinks about me. Go ask him. That's why I did all of this. It isn't for what I have. Make sense? And so I remember in 2018, I'd been doing all these things, and I thought, because that was in 2008 or 9, where I was reading Compound of 2008. So here I am 10 years later. I just thought, dude, I thought I would be further along than where I am. And there's no way, I'm not even close in 2018. So just to give perspective, I'm 18, 19, 21. I'm 3 years away. 18, 19, 20, 21. So I'm 4 years away from this. And I'm not even close to retiring. 4 years away. And I remember sitting at my desk at home and praying and just going, God, like, I don't understand. Like, I think I should be doing these other things in my business that I think is following my heart. Does that make sense? But if I do it, like when I do it in this way, like people in my business don't really do these things, like not the way I want to do it, blah, 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 all the stuff. And I prayed and I said, I might go 5 minutes over. Are you okay with that? So I said this prayer, and I just said, God, if you give me proof, if you give me a sign that you actually want me to do this, I will do these things. But because for a year I felt, all of 17, I just felt sick to my stomach that I wasn't doing these things I really felt I need to be doing to achieve my life purpose. But it just felt weird, uncomfortable, and nobody talks like how I thought I should be doing. Does that make sense? Anybody relate to that right now? So I just thought, nobody does this in my business. Like, this is crazy. Like, so I just pray. So as I'm saying this prayer, and I don't say this, but I'm just telling you, but I'm saying this prayer and I just say, okay, here's the deal. Give me the book. If you give me the source of all motivation, you give me the book that is the source of all motivation, and do not tell me the Bible. If you tell me the Bible, no. Give me a book that is the source of all motivation, where all of this stuff got started, all this motivation, Tony Robbins, because in the 7th grade, I had to take a class of Zig Ziglar for 12 weeks, see you at the top and read it. And so I just thought, and I hadn't thought of that. That was in 2018. I took that class in the 7th grade. How old are you in 7th grade? 12? So 84, from 84 to 2018. Never thought of that again. And I just thought, okay, if you give me the book, then I said, okay, give me the book that Zig Ziglar got his start at. Give me that book. If you give me that book, which is, I think is the source of all motivation, I'll do all this crazy stuff I think I should do. And he's like, and I just prayed that and I was crying and I said, all right. And so I never thought anything of it. A week later, this guy that moved into my neighborhood 6 months earlier came to my house and said, hey, you got a minute? I go, yeah. He's like, I work at home and all week long, I had this book in my office that my dad would read from us. And it's a really old book. And I know you like Tony Robbins, but I don't even know. But I know this is weird. And I'm very uncomfortable telling you this because this book was written in the 1800s. But I just keep on thinking, I need to give you this book. And I'm like, weird. So he gives me this book. There's so much to the story, but I'm just like, it's like you're reading the synopsis, but you're not reading the whole book. But so I take that book and I have a minute and I read it. The next day I take it with me in my car. I just open it up because I have a spare minute. And when I open it up, the title of the chapter says Possibilities and Spare Moments. And I thought, oh my hell, I just said I have a spare minute. I should look this up. And I opened up to that chapter. And I read this quote. I'm not going to quote. In essence, it says this. For every hour in a man's life, there is a specific work to be done. And when that work is gone undone, forever is lost the opportunity. Do you see how that correlates what I read 10 years ago by compound effect? There's a compound effect of your actions, and if you do it now, it'll pay off. That spoke to me. I'm like, there's no way. I opened up this damn old book that was written in 1891, and it said the very thing that I learned 10 years ago. Impossible. Okay. Long story short, I talked to Toby Roberts. Anybody know who Toby Roberts is? City Creek Mortgage. Okay, so you can ask her all this. So what I'm going to tell you sounds ridiculous. He's lying. Go ask Toby Roberts. She was there the whole time she experienced this with me. I give Toby Roberts a book, copy this book. I tell Toby Roberts, God told me that Zig Ziglar, this is the book he read to get his start. And she's like, how would you know that? I'm like, God told me. She's like, oh my gosh, I got chills when you said that, but I don't even know, did you look it up? I'm like, I can't find it out. I don't know where it is. I've searched it. I can't confirm it. And she's like, okay. Anyway, I got Toby a copy of that book. And I just heard this, wrap it in the era that it was written. So I wrapped it with and craft paper, which is like a paper bag. And I wrapped it with a string and I wax sealed it because for some reason, 6 weeks earlier, I had this impression, buy a wax stamp. My wife's like, why do you buy crazy stuff? Because they always say, you're the gadget king. You buy crazy shit all the time. I'm like, I don't know. I just bought this wax stamp. So then I thought, I'm going to give this book to Toby Roberts. I'll just show this to you. Because it sounds like ridiculous, but, and I'm going to go 5 minutes over, but I'll just show you. So that was the book I got. So when he gave me the book, I just had this thought, this book is important to me. I don't know why, but I took a picture of it. When I read it, this is for every hour in a man's work. If you don't do it, then it's gone. Then I heard this, literally clear as day. This is the book you asked for. Now go do what you said you're going to do. And I was crying. Then my client got in the car. He's like, what's the matter? I'm like, give me a second. And I was like, this is crazy. So I showed this book to Toby. I tell her this. There's the quote. I wrap it. Do you see this? Like, here's the screenshot. 2018. Like, I wrap it, give it to Toby. You see how I wrapped it? Okay? That's what I'm saying. All verifiable. You can ask her. You can fact check me all you want. Anyway, so this guy makes a comment on Toby Roberts' post and says, I love this copy of this book. He wrote it all by hand in a guest room that he was in a barn, and then the barn burnt down, and he had to rewrite the entire book. It's the original mental health manuscript. Whoever bought you this book is a freaking class act. And I'm like, Toby, I'm a freaking class act. I'm like, that's what I'm most proud of. Anyway, and she said, dude, that guy knows this book. Ask him. I'm like, where'd you meet him? She's like, at this big business event in California. He knows stuff, blah, blah, blah. She's like, message him. So I messaged him. Screenshot. Hey, Jason, I had an experience with this book, Pushing to the Front, and I'll tell you what. Curious how you found it. I've been obsessed by it. Here's his response. April 14th, 10:17 a.m. I found it through a recommendation from Zig Ziglar. He was one of my early mentors. He said everything about this book is universe changing. I screenshot that, sent that to Toby, and she's like, F you. Did you make this up? Like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. So then I said, hey, can I meet you and talk to you on the phone? He says, yes. So I get on the phone with him, and he schedules that at the same time that I have this meeting with my escrow officer. So I have a couple of my escrow officers in this meeting. I get the guy on the phone. I tell my escrow officers this story, and they're like, you're crazy. And one lady said, she's like, Louie, you kind of tell these stories sometimes, and they're just so crazy. But okay, let's see what happens. And I'm like, okay, it's so she kind of thinks I'm lying a little bit, exaggerating. And so I get on the phone. I put him on speaker. I have a little JBL flip phone so that everybody can hear it. I'm like, be quiet. He doesn't know that we're doing this. I tell him about this book, and I tell him that God told me that this is how Zig Ziglar got to start. And this is exactly what he said. Who the fuck do you think you are? Is this a effing joke? Are you effing, but he was saying the real word, are you effing kidding me? Who the F? And I kept turning down the phone because people could hear, because the speaker, I was just like, dude, we don't swear in this company. I was like turning it down. And then he goes, I just want to tell you this, dude. There's 7 billion people on this planet. There's 50 people that know that story. I know the story because he personally told me, and the universe tapped you on the shoulder. So whatever it is that you asked for confirmation of, he's like, you better fucking do it. And now I'm obligated to help you, and I hate you for that. He's like, literally, dude, this is crazy. He's like, there's no way. He goes, I just want to tell you my story. I flew in to meet with Zig Ziglar to pitch him on the stuff that my company was doing. He toured me of his office. He has all these portraits of the people that were important to him in his life. He's like, he goes, and when I met, he goes, the older he got, because I knew him for years, the older he got, he was losing his memory because he had Alzheimer's, something like that. And he goes, he got to a point that of all those, there was like 50 people. He's like, of all those people, he could only remember 2 people of the 50 people. He's like, do you know who they were? I go, no. He's like, his mom and his black nanny. He goes, because his dad died when he was 7, so his mom hired this nanny to help raise the kids because they had 8 kids, 7 siblings, and he sort of raised his kids. He's like, did you know this? I'm like, I don't know. Maybe in the 7th grade I did. I don't know. Like, I do not remember any of this. He's like, so I want you to tell you this. He personally told me this story because you can't find it on the internet. Did you search the internet? I said, I did. He's like, yeah, you're not going to find it. It's in his journal. He personally told it to me. He held this sacred. He goes, and that's why I'm just so blown away because you know something that he never told publicly this. And my employees are sitting there at the conference room table, and they're like, what? I'm like, I don't know. Like, can't make this up. So, and he goes, this is the story. The nanny says to Zig one day, tonight, Zig, you and I need to have a special conversation in my room. Meet me in my room tonight before you go to bed. He goes, I thought I was in trouble, but I meet with the nanny. He goes, because I was in trouble a lot. But he goes, I meet with the nanny. She says, Zig, you need to sit down. He goes, so he sat down on her bed, and he's like, Zig, I had a dream a few nights ago where God told me that you are to become a person that will change the world. And she's like, and it was so clear. He told me to go buy a book that I didn't even know the name of before he told me. And he goes, do you know what book that is? I go, no. He's like, it's the fucking book that you told me about. That's the book, Pushing to the Front by Orison Swett Marden. Do you know who Orison Swett Marden is? I go, no. He goes, he is the founding father of all motivation as we know it today. He is the source of he is the person that, when you talk about self-development, betterment, all this, he started it in the 1800s. It's him. He goes, it's not, and it was funny because he was like, it's not the Bible. It's him. I go, dude. He goes, this is the guy. Look it up. He's like, look it up. Zig Ziglar, this was his mentor. This is who he modeled his life after. Orison Swett Martin. And he goes, again, dude, now I got to help you and I hate you. He goes, I got to go. And he was crying. This guy was like, I'm crying. He goes, I don't even know what you look like. Send me a picture, dude. I have no idea what you look like. Let's meet next week. Call me later. Bye. And I hung up, and Jen Mercer's escrow officer that's still with me today, she said, dude, you tell crazy stories. And I kind of didn't believe them sometimes, but dude, I was in one. This is crazy. And then I called Toby Roberts and said, hey, Toby, this is happening. And then I called Spring Benson because she was my client. I told Spring, she's like, dude, weird, crazy. And so my point is this, that book was like, to me, a Dumbo's feather. I just thought, dude, if I have this book, then I can do anything I want. Because there's no way in 4 years that I'm losing money in 2018. Literally, we did not make a profit. I mean, if we made like $50,000 in profit in 18. Nothing. I made $40,000 more than my highest paid escrow officer, which is a terrible deal as a business owner, right? But that was our numbers in 2018. And at the end of 2021, I sold my business for an 8-figure number that gave me what I have today. And I can't do that. But following my life purpose, following who I am, and doing crazy things that I think I would never do that. I'm going to be seen as a fool if I do this, but I've just got to do it. Following that and being connected to my heart and not my mind, and allowing my soulful self to guide my actions, even though it sounds crazy. And after that experience is when I found breathwork, and breathwork is why I was like now running towards doing all of the stuff, because breathwork put me into my most soulful self. It made me do things that I was never courageous enough to do. And that's why when we talk about breathwork, and we could do something later, or a little bit, I know you got to go, it's 1:30, but we could do like a 10-minute session just to give you a perspective of it. But breathwork was what literally pivoted me to where I wasn't just jogging towards my life purpose. Like I was sprinting towards it. I'm like, I don't give a shit what happens. I don't care if there's a pothole. I don't even need to see what's on the ground. I just know I'm going to go do this. My heart, my soul says I should do it. I feel it. It doesn't make sense. And my business partner would often say this, Louie, the stuff you say does not make business sense, because he's a very smart person, graduated top law school in the country, top part of his class. And he's like, you want us to do crazy shit. It doesn't make sense business-wise, but then it works out. And it works out because who you truly are is going to work out as long as you truly are following it. And that's why I say, if someone isn't speaking that to you, all they're telling you is just to do stuff that's going to keep you running in circles. And I guarantee you, you're not going to be happy and fulfilled, because it won't have changed your soul like it needs to have changed your soul. And the purpose isn't the money anyway, because what does it profit you to make all this money and to still be a a-hole? Nothing. It's not worth it. It's not the life you want. Nobody here wants that life. What you want is the person. And that is my message. And that's why I see so many people and the way they get coached and mentored and stuff. I'm like, dude, you're not coaching them to their highest and best self. You're coaching to a skill. You're coaching to a program. No program ever made the money. Made a lot of MLMs, made some people rich, but it didn't make them the soulful person they've always wanted to be. And that's who you want. And that's who your kids want. And that's what your spouses want. And that is what I have come to know, and it's true, that you are the source of all of the information that you truly need. How it needs to be done, you know it. And thank you for letting me be here with you today.